The first thing to return isn't a thought, but a smell. Antiseptic and ozone, the clean, dead scent of a place where life is studied but not lived. My eyes flutter open. The light is a sterile, humming white, buzzing from long tubes in the ceiling. This isn't my bunk. This isn't any military base I've ever seen. I'm in a white cell, maybe 10 feet by 10, made of some seamless polymer material. A thick, reinforced window is my only connection to the world. My head is a swamp of tranquilizer fog. Memories flicker like dying embers. The glint of a needle, the low hum of a massive scanner, muted screams that might have been my own. The recruiter's words echo in the haze. A man in an expensive suit, working for a DARPA subcontracted R&D outfit called Aegis Dynamics. He'd sold it to us as the next evolution in special warfare. An elite bioenhancement unit. He'd promised us we'd be legends. He never mentioned this part. My file had been flagged, my transfer orders processed through a labyrinthine channel at SOCOM, all so perfectly redacted and stamped that it felt both top tier and deeply wrong. They hadn't just recruited us, they'd made us ghosts in the system. I push myself up, my body aching with a profound cellular weariness. Across a sterile corridor, I see other cells. In one, a mountain of a man, Deacon, is already on his feet, his knuckles white as he grips the frame of his cot. His eyes burning with a familiar rage, meet mine. He was first MSOB before the brass in Washington started calling them Raiders, back when they were still Force Recon, a predator by trade. To his right, Marcus. Even in this sterile cage, he looks like he's in command. He sits perfectly still on his own cot, his gaze sweeping the corridor, analyzing, calculating. The former ranger's mind is always 2 steps ahead. He catches my eye and gives a slow, deliberate nod. Then I see Sam, the youngest of us, our 18E, the Special Forces communication sergeant who could make a field radio sing opera. He looks lost, scared, clutching a thin blanket like a child. We were Phantom 4. Leader, point man, analyst, and comms. A perfect fire team, hand-picked and erased from the world. Marcus raises a hand, his fingers forming a quick, precise sign from our old manual. Status? I tap my head, drugged, confused. Deacon just bares his teeth and slams a fist into his palm, angry. Sam shakes his head, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. Scared. The soft hiss of our cell doors unlocking cuts through the humming silence. 2 men in white lab coats, flanked by 4 guards in black tactical gear, stop at each door. They don't look like soldiers. They look like corporate security, hired muscle with expensive rifles and nervous eyes. Project Lycaon assets, on your feet, one of the lab coats says, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. The director is ready for you. We're marched down a series of identical white corridors, the air growing colder, the smell of chemicals sharper. We enter a room that is part operating theater, part torture chamber. 4 steel tables dominate the space, each equipped with heavy magnetic restraints. Standing by a control console is a man in a pristine lab coat. He's thin, with sharp features and the coldest, palest blue eyes I've ever seen. They're the eyes of a man who sees the world not as a collection of people, but as a series of problems to be solved. "Gentlemen," he says, his voice a smooth, cultured baritone, "I am Dr. Alistair Finch. Welcome to the first day of the rest of your lives. You are pioneers. You are the template for the future of warfare. Today you will be gifted with strength and senses beyond your comprehension. We don't have a choice." The guards force us onto the tables, the restraints clamping down with heavy thuds. I struggle, a useless, panicked reflex. Marcus remains stoic. Deacon roars, a promise of violence that makes one of the guards flinch. Finch ignores him, picking up a syringe gun. What we are about to administer is the lycanthropic recombinant alpha virus, LRAV, a viral vector that will rewrite your genetic code on a fundamental level. There will be discomfort. The word discomfort is a grotesque understatement. The needle hisses against my neck. For a second, there's nothing. Then fire. It's not a burn. It's an unmaking. I feel it spreading through my veins, a liquid agony that sets every nerve alight. My skeleton feels like it's dissolving. I hear a sickening crack and realize it's my own femur, snapping and then violently re-knitting itself into a new, wrong shape. A scream tears itself from my throat, a sound more animal than human. Across the room, Marcus's body is convulsing, his back arching at an impossible angle. Deacon is letting out a continuous guttural bellow of pure rage, the steel of his restraints groaning and starting to bend. The room is filled with our screams and the wet, tearing sounds of our own bodies betraying us. My consciousness frays, replaced by a red tide of primal fury. Kill, hunt, feed. The thoughts aren't mine, but they are me. I black out. When I come to, the world is a symphony of chaos. The emergency klaxons are blaring, a frantic, pulsing shriek. The room is a charnel house. The guards in lab coats are gone, or parts of them are here, splattered across the white walls in obscene, crimson artwork. I'm on all fours, my body massive, covered in coarse gray fur. My hands are claws. My face is a snout full of teeth that ache for flesh. I am 8 feet of monster. Through the ringing in my new ears, I hear a guard down the hall, his panicked voice crackling over a radio. Containment protocols are offline for maintenance, I repeat. Sectors Gamma and Delta are not sealed. His words are cut off by a wet crunch. The source of the sound is Deacon. He's a nightmare of black fur and muscle, even bigger than me, and he's just smashed through a reinforced concrete wall like it was drywall. He's lost, completely gone to the beast. He turns, his yellow eyes fixing on the remaining terrified scientists cowering behind the console. "Deacon, stand down!" The voice is a deep, guttural snarl, but it holds the unmistakable tone of command. It's Marcus. He's on 2 feet, somehow, his gray-furred form radiating a desperate authority. He's fighting it, wrestling the beast for control. His snarl snaps Deacon out of his bloodlust, his head whipping toward Marcus. We don't escape. We rampage. We follow Marcus through the labyrinthine corridors of the Aegis Dynamics facility, a place buried deep in the heart of the Sierra Nevada mountains. My new senses are a tidal wave of information. I can smell the coppery tang of fear from a lab tech hiding in a supply closet 2 floors above. I can hear the frantic thumping of his heart. I see the world in a shimmering thermal overlay, heat signatures painting the darkness in vibrant reds and oranges. I can smell the ozone from a shorted-out electrical panel 3 hallways away. It's a gift. It's a curse. It's too much. We reach a massive bay door, a cargo airlock. It's our only way out. Sam, bless his terrified, brilliant mind, stumbles to a nearby terminal. His claws are clumsy on the keypad, but the muscle memory, the human part of him, is still there. He smashes his fist against the screen, then somehow manages to input the emergency release code. With a grinding groan, the massive steel door slides open. We burst out into the night. A freezing rain is falling, plastering our new fur to our monstrous bodies. The air is thick with the scent of pine and wet earth. It's the smell of freedom, and it's intoxicating. But we're wounded not from battle, but from our own creation. We are bleeding, disoriented, and still half lost in the animal brain. We find a shallow cave nestled in a rocky outcrop. As the hours pass, the transformation recedes. It's as agonizing as the onset. Our bones grind and shrink. Our skin splits and peels, leaving us naked, shivering, and human again. We're covered in a mixture of our own blood and the blood of the people we just slaughtered. The four of us huddle together in the darkness, the cold mountain air slicing at our raw skin. No one speaks. We just look at each other, not as soldiers of Phantom 4 anymore, but as brothers in this new, living hell. In the chilling silence of that cave, an unspoken vow is forged. We will survive, and we will have our revenge. The first few days in the Stanislaus National Forest are a special kind of hell. Not of fire, but of sensation. Our new senses, a tactical advantage in the sterile confines of the lab, are a relentless torture in the wild. The wind rustling through the pines is a deafening roar. The drip of water in our cave is like a hammer blow. Every smell, damp soil, decaying leaves, the scent of a fox a mile away, is an assault, a cacophony of odors that threatens to drown my sanity. I spend hours with my head pressed against the cold stone of the cave, trying to learn how to build walls in my own mind, how to filter the flood of information from a weapon of self-destruction into a tool for survival. Then comes the hunger. Not the familiar pangs of an empty stomach, but a deep, gnawing craving that human food can't touch. We found a hiker's abandoned backpack with some trail mix and protein bars. Eating them was like chewing on sawdust. The beast inside us, the new biology Finch cursed us with, demanded something else. It demanded meat, fresh and bloody. Marcus, ever the leader, lays down the law, his voice raw but firm. We hunt animals, only animals. We are not those things in the lab. We control it. It doesn't control us. Our first hunt is a grim, necessary business. We track a buck for hours, our new bodies moving with a silent, terrifying grace. When we close in, there's no clean shot, no merciful end. It's a brutal, primal takedown. Deacon, in his half-transformed state, runs it down with frightening speed. Marcus delivers the killing blow. The act is horrifying, but the first taste of warm blood and fresh meat is a jolt of pure energy. It silences the gnawing void inside and stitches our torn bodies back together. It makes us strong. It makes us monsters. In the weeks that follow, we begin to understand what we've become. We test our limits in the deep woods, far from any trails. Our speed is phenomenal. I pace a coyote one night and leave it in my dust. Our strength is obscene. Deacon, in a fit of frustration, tears a young aspen tree out of the ground, roots and all. But the most incredible gift is the regeneration. A deep gash on my arm from a slip on a rock face, a cut that would have needed stitches and weeks to heal, knits itself closed in less than a day, leaving only a faint, silvery scar. Sam discovers something unique to him. He was our comms guy, attuned to the electromagnetic spectrum. Now he can feel it. It's like a hum, he whispers one evening, his eyes closed. I can feel the power lines over that ridge. They sing. He becomes our early warning system, our living sensor array. But the new power strains our old hierarchy. Deacon, drunk on his own savage strength, is the first to crack. "You're too cautious, Marcus," he growls one night, his massive frame coiled with tension. "We should be hunting them, the ones in the white coats." "We're not ready, Deacon," Marcus says calmly, not rising to the bait. "We're still learning. We go after them now. We're dead." "I'm not afraid of them." Deacon roars, and in a flash he shifts. Not a full transformation, but his muscles swell, his face elongates, his eyes blaze with yellow fury. He lunges at Marcus. The fight is short and brutal. It's not about who is stronger. Deacon is a hurricane of claws and fury. But Marcus is a tactician. He doesn't meet force with force. He dodges, weaves, using Deacon's own momentum against him. He trips Deacon, sending him crashing into a rock wall, then pins him down, a low, dominant snarl rumbling in his chest. He doesn't harm him. He just holds him, a clear display of control over raw power. When Deacon finally shifts back, panting and bloodied, the challenge is over. Marcus's leadership is cemented, not by being the strongest, but by being the smartest. We need a better sanctuary, a place to call our own. We find it by accident. An abandoned gold mine from the 1800s, its entrance hidden behind a thicket of overgrown manzanita. The main shaft is collapsed, but a side tunnel is stable, leading deep into the mountain. It's dark, defensible, and isolated. It becomes our den. We learn to live a dual life. By day, we are 4 weary, haunted men trying to hold on to the scraps of our humanity. By night, we are the apex predators of the Sierra Nevada, a pack of ghosts that stalks the moonlit forest. One evening, we're scouting the park's edge when we stumble upon them. A camp. Not hikers. Poachers. 3 of them, with illegal traps and high-powered rifles. The smell of cheap whiskey and unwashed bodies hits me from a quarter-mile away. The beast inside me screams to attack, to purge these intruders. I can see the same instinct in Deacon's eyes, a hungry glint. But Marcus holds up a hand, a silent command. Wait. Watch. We observe them from the shadows of the tree line. We listen to their crude jokes, watch them stumble around their campfire. And for the first time, I see normal humans through our new eyes. They seem so fragile, so slow. Their senses are pathetic. We could be on them in seconds, and they'd never even know we were there. The thought is both empowering and terrifying. Just as we're about to pull back, a faint, rhythmic pulse cuts through the night. It's not a sound, but a feeling. Sam stiffens beside me, his head cocked. "What is it?" Marcus whispers. Sam's eyes are wide with a new kind of fear, a fear that has nothing to do with poachers or wild animals. "Radio," he says, his voice barely audible. A weak, encrypted signal, burst transmission. It's a search grid. They're close. The fragile sense of safety we'd built in our mountain fortress shatters. The cold dread that washes over me is worse than any hunger, any sensory overload. Our creators hadn't forgotten about us. The hunt was on. The search party isn't military. We can tell that from a mile away. They move like contractors, hired guns from Aegis Dynamics' private security wing. They're loud, relying on their tech instead of fieldcraft. They have thermal imagers, but they trust the readouts more than their own eyes. They think they're hunting 4 escaped lab rats. They have no idea they just walked into a predator's territory. "They're treating this like a retrieval mission, not a combat op," Marcus whispers, his voice a low rumble in the darkness. We're perched on a ridge overlooking the valley where the 8-man team is setting up a temporary camp. They're arrogant. We'll use that. We don't engage them head-on. That's their game, a game of bullets and body armor. We play our own. We become phantoms, using the forest itself as our weapon. We wage a war of terror. My job is misdirection. I spend the first night creating false trails, ghosting along the edges of their perimeter, leaving just enough of a heat signature to show up on their scopes before vanishing. I leave single, massive paw prints in soft earth where they're sure to find them, prints too large for any known animal. Let their imaginations do the work. Deacon, a master of mimicry, hides in the deep woods, letting out blood-curdling howls that echo through the canyons, sounds that are part wolf, apart something else entirely, something that makes the hair on your arms stand up. We want them on edge, sleep-deprived and scared. Marcus is the ghost in the dark. He picks them off one by one, not to kill, but to separate. A silent takedown of a sentry on the perimeter. A gear pack vanishing from the edge of the camp. He uses their own radio frequencies, clicking the mic just enough to create static to make them think their comms are failing. We're dismantling them psychologically before we ever touch them physically. We make them believe the forest itself is haunted by a primal nightmare. By the third night, they're a wreck. We can hear them arguing, their voices tight with fear. They start seeing things in the shadows, shooting at noises. They're exactly where we want them, but arrogance gives way to panicked protocol. One of the mercs, jumpy and straying from the group, stumbles right into the thicket where Sam is concealed. There's no time for a plan, no time for a silent takedown. The merc raises his rifle, his eyes wide with shock and terror as he sees Sam for what he is. There's a blur of motion, a choked scream, the crack of bone. The firefight is sudden, chaotic, and brutally short. We descend on them from all sides, a storm of claws and fury. It's not a battle, it's a slaughter. The mercs are trained to fight men, not 8-foot-tall engines of destruction that move faster than the eye can track and shrug off pistol rounds like bee stings. When the roaring stops and the forest falls silent again, the air is thick with the smell of gunpowder and blood. Our first human blood since the escape. This time, it was a conscious choice. The aftermath is grim. We stand among the bodies, our fur matted with blood, the adrenaline fading to a cold, heavy sickness in my gut. We methodically search the dead. We take their rifles, their ammunition, their advanced comms gear, and their medical kits. On one of the bodies, I find a ruggedized tablet. I power it on, and there we are, our service photos. Marcus, Deacon, Sam, and me. Below our faces is the project designation. Object, Lycaon, and beneath that, a single chilling order. Assets are to be contained and returned alive. If live capture is not viable, terminate with extreme prejudice. A heavy silence hangs between us, broken only by the drip of blood from Deacon's claws. He looks satisfied. The fury in him has been sated for now. But Sam is shaking, staring at his own hands as if they're alien things. He just killed a man, up close and personal. The optimistic kid we knew is gone, replaced by a hollowed-out soldier staring into the abyss. Marcus and I share a look. We both know what this means. We've crossed a line. There's no going back. We are no longer just fugitives fighting for survival. We are combatants in a war we didn't ask for, against an enemy with unlimited resources. The local Aegis office must have a congressman on payroll, a direct line to someone who could put a lid on this. No park rangers, no sheriff's department, no Coast Guard choppers sweeping the mountains. Aegis had bought themselves a private hunting ground on federal land. We can't stay in the mine. They found us once. They'll find us again. We pack our new trophies, the weapons and gear, and move out, deeper into the Sierras. We're on the run again, but this time we're not just 4 escaped experiments. We are armed, we are battle-hardened, and we are infinitely more dangerous. That night, while Marcus and Deacon rest, I tinker with the captured radio. It's military grade, encrypted. But Sam taught me a few things. I run a bypass, scanning the Aegis tactical frequencies. It takes hours, but then I hear it. A clear, cold voice cutting through the static. Alpha team is offline. I repeat, Alpha is dark. No contact for 3 hours. Assume compromised. A pause, then another voice. Roger that, Command. Activating contingency. The special containment unit is en route. ETA 0600. My blood runs cold. Special Containment Unit. SCU. This wasn't some corporate retrieval team. These weren't mercs. These were professionals. The real hunters were coming. The Special Containment Unit moves differently. They don't crash through the undergrowth. They glide. They are ghosts in digital camouflage, their movements economical and silent. They don't rely on sight alone. They deploy a perimeter of seismic sensors and laser tripwires, creating a digital web to trap us. These aren't the clumsy hunters from before. These are professionals, an elite unit handpicked by Aegis, and they've studied us. They know our strengths. This is no longer a hunt. It's a chess match. We nearly walk right into their first trap. We were moving along a ridgeline, using the terrain to mask our approach, when my vision, that strange thermal spectrum sight, caught something. A flicker. An almost invisible line of coherent light, thinner than a spider's thread stretched between two pines. A laser tripwire. I stopped so suddenly that Deacon, following close behind, almost crashed into me. "Trap," I whispered, my voice barely a breath of air. Marcus crept forward, his eyes scanning the forest floor. He pointed. A small circular disc, half buried in the pine needles. A seismic sensor. They were mapping our movements, trying to funnel us. "They're learning," Marcus rumbled, his expression grim. "We can't rely on brute force anymore. We have to be smarter. We have to adapt. We become saboteurs. Before we cross open ground, we coat our bodies in cold, wet mud from creek beds, masking our heat signatures from their thermal scopes. We learn to move through the streams themselves, the running water washing away our scent and tracks. We are fighting technology with instinct, turning the forest that was once our torture chamber into our greatest ally. The SCU are relentless. They track us for days, pushing us east, toward the steeper, more rugged slopes of the Sierra Nevada. They're boxing us in, forcing us toward a dead end they've chosen. We find ourselves cornered in a narrow gorge with a massive, cascading waterfall at its head. The roar of the water is deafening, a constant thunderous boom that scrambles our hearing and, we hope, their electronic sensors. It's a tactical nightmare, but it's the only path forward. Behind the waterfall is a deep, slick-walled cave. It's a natural kill box, and they know we're in it. The attack comes without warning. They don't storm the entrance. They toss in flashbangs, but we're already deep inside, our sensitive eyes shielded by the cave's darkness. Then they come. 6 of them, moving in a tight, fluid formation, their rifle-mounted lights cutting through the spray and mist. The cave erupts into a maelstrom of violence. The roar of the waterfall is punctuated by the deafening crack of automatic rifle fire. Bullets spark and ricochet off the wet stone walls, whining past our heads. Deacon lets out a full-bodied, bestial roar that momentarily drowns out even the waterfall and charges into them, a force of pure kinetic violence. He's a wrecking ball, scattering their perfect formation. Marcus and I use the chaos. We scale the slick walls, our claws finding purchase where no human could, attacking them from above and the sides. It's a whirlwind of close-quarters combat. I feel a searing, white-hot pain as a round tears through the flesh of my upper arm. I see Marcus grunt as a volley of shots stitch across his side. But he doesn't slow down. He fights through the pain, his movements precise and deadly. We win, but it's a victory that feels like a defeat. As the last SCU operator falls, the cave grows quiet, save for the eternal thunder of the water. We are all wounded. My arm is broken, the bone shattered. Marcus is bleeding heavily from a wound in his flank. A clean through and through that missed his organs by an inch. Even Deacon, the juggernaut, is riddled with cuts and bruises. Our vaunted regeneration is already working, the pain slowly dulling, the flesh knitting, but it's working overtime. We're exhausted, physically and mentally. This victory didn't bring relief, only the grim certainty that Aegis would just send more, and they would be better prepared. We search the bodies. More ammo, better comms. Then I find something new. Tucked into the vest of their commander is a syringe gun, smaller and more advanced than the one Finch used on us. It's loaded with a cartridge filled with a viscous pale green fluid. "What is that?" Deacon grunts, prodding it with a claw. Sam, who had stayed at the back of the cave, our designated reserve, takes it from me. He examines it, his tech-savvy mind kicking in. "I don't know, but based on the delivery system, but it's not a poison. It's a countermeasure. Maybe a regeneration inhibitor, or a targeted neurotranquilizer designed specifically for our biology." They weren't just coming to kill us anymore. They were coming with weapons designed to negate our advantages, to turn us back into helpless lab rats. The weight of the constant, unending fight is crushing us. Deacon's aggression is curdling into paranoia. He sees threats in every shadow. Sam has retreated into a shell of silence, the horror of the first kill hollowing him out. Even Marcus, our rock, looks weary, the burden of leadership etching deep lines into his face. I can feel our pack, our small brotherhood, starting to fray at the seams. And in the cold, damp air of that cave, I feel a chilling premonition. The next storm was coming, and I wasn't sure we'd be able to weather it together. The next hunters brought a new kind of weapon. It wasn't a bullet. It wasn't a blade. It was silence's opposite. It was sound. We were moving through a dry, rocky canyon on the eastern slopes of the Sierras, the landscape shifting from lush forest to arid badlands. We were trying to put as much distance as possible between us and the waterfall. That's when we first felt it. Not a sound heard with the ears, but a vibration felt in the bones. A deep, subsonic pulse that resonated in our chests, our skulls. Then they activated the emitters, portable infrasound generators. They had flanked the canyon, setting up a perimeter of them. The frequency was low, below 20 hertz, undetectable to a normal human ear. To our hyper-acute senses, it was an apocalypse. The world dissolved into a nauseating, vibrating agony. It wasn't a sharp pain like a cut or a bullet. It was a deep, resonant wrongness that shook us from the inside out. My organs felt like they were turning to jelly. My vision blurred, the rocks of the canyon walls seeming to liquefy and swim. A wave of vertigo and nausea so profound hit me that I collapsed onto the gravel, my body convulsing. It felt like my own skeleton was trying to tear its way out of my body. It was a weapon that turned our greatest sensory advantage into an instrument of pure torture. They used the sound like sheepdogs, herding panicked livestock. The waves of infrasound came from our flanks and rear, pushing us forward, deeper into the narrow confines of the canyon. To retreat or stay still was to surrender to the debilitating agony. The only path away from the pain was forward, straight into their trap. At the end of the canyon, a dozen SCU operators were waiting, arrayed in a perfect firing line. They wore heavy, sound-dampening helmets. They were immune. We were fish in a barrel. "Scatter!" Marcus roared, his voice barely a gargle over the vibrating air. But there was nowhere to go. The canyon walls were too sheer to climb. Chaos erupted. The infrasound waves disoriented us, making coordinated action impossible. We were just four creatures, blinded by pain, trying to escape the invisible torment. I saw Sam stumble. He was the youngest, not as physically powerful as Deacon or as controlled as Marcus. The sonic assault hit him hard. He went down to one knee, clutching his head, his face a mask of pure misery. The SCU operators advanced on him, their movements calm and methodical. They weren't firing bullets. They were firing darts. The same green fluid-filled darts we'd found before. They surrounded him. A wave of impotent fury surged through me, momentarily clearing the sonic haze. Deacon saw it too, with a roar that was part defiance and part agony. He charged toward Sam, a berserker throwing himself at a fortified wall. He would die before he got halfway. "Deacon, no." Marcus's voice cut through the chaos. He was bleeding from his nose and ears, but he was still thinking tactically. He tackled Deacon, dragging him bodily behind a large boulder. "We can't get to him. They'll kill us all." I watched, helpless, as they swarmed Sam. I saw the small darts pockmark his body. I saw him struggle, then go limp, his transformation receding as the green fluid coursed through his system. They threw a net over his now human form and dragged him away. We lost a brother. Marcus's decision saved our lives. He found a fissure in the canyon wall, a crack just wide enough for us to squeeze through, and we scrambled away, leaving the canyon and the hunters behind. The infrasound faded, but the silence that replaced it was infinitely worse. We found shelter in a small, abandoned prospector's shack hours later. No one spoke. The three of us sat in the darkness, the space where Sam should have been a gaping, screaming void. We survived, but we left him. Grief is a corrosive acid. It ate away the foundations of our pack. "You left him!" Deacon finally exploded, his voice a raw wound. He rounded on Marcus, his fists clenched. "We should have died with him. And what good would that have done him?" Marcus shot back, his own face a portrait of anguish and self-loathing. For the first time, I saw a crack in his leader's facade. We'd all be dead or captured. This way we're still in the fight. "What fight?" Deacon spat. "We're just running, hiding, waiting for them to pick us off one by one." He was right. I felt it too. A cold, hard certainty solidifying in my chest. We had been running for our lives, reacting, surviving. But survival wasn't enough anymore. They had taken one of us. They had taken our family. Deacon blamed Marcus. Marcus blamed himself. And I just felt a cold, terrifying clarity descend. The fear was gone. The desperation was gone. All that was left was a purpose, sharp and clear as a shard of glass. This was no longer about survival. This was about retribution. Our new den was a derelict forest ranger cabin smelling of rot and forgotten years. The grief for Sam was a physical presence in the small space, a fourth member of our fractured team. It was here, in the oppressive silence, that Marcus finally drew a line in the dirt. "Deacon was right," he said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of command. He looked at us, his eyes burning with a new, cold fire. "We're done running. We're done hiding. We're going on the offensive." He paused, letting the words sink in. "We're going to find the man who did this to us. We're going to find Finch." The shift in purpose was a jolt of electricity. Vengeance was a clearer, more powerful motivator than survival. The plan was insane. A suicidal lunge back into the world that was hunting us, but it was better than cowering in the woods waiting for the next wave of hunters. We couldn't operate as monsters anymore. We needed to be ghosts in their world. Our first mission was a careful, nerve-wracking raid on a small, isolated town nestled in the foothills. Under the cover of a moonless night, we slipped in, not as predators, but as thieves. We stole clothes from laundry lines, jeans, hoodies, flannel shirts that helped us look like any other drifters. Deacon, with a surprisingly delicate touch for a man his size, siphoned gas and lifted a few $100s in cash from the glove box of an unlocked pickup truck. We were becoming something else now. Not just soldiers, not just beasts, but insurgents. My role was to think. Back in the cabin, with a stolen map spread out on the floor, I forced myself to remember. I replayed every scrap of conversation I'd overheard in the Aegis facility. Names, project codes, corporate jargon. I closed my eyes and put myself back in that sterile hell, listening. Most of it was useless, but one phrase stuck out. Sierra Logistics. A third-party contractor that handled all of Aegis's sensitive material transport in the region. It was a long shot, but it was the only thread we had. We spent 2 days watching the main highway that serviced a known Aegis administrative building 60 miles away. On the third day, we saw it. A nondescript 18-wheeler with a small, discreet SL logo on the door. We followed it for hours, waiting for the perfect moment. It came after dark, on a lonely stretch of 2-lane blacktop, winding through the mountains. We didn't use the truck we stole. We moved on foot, flanking the road, using our inhuman speed to get ahead of it. Marcus laid out a simple, brutal plan. When the truck came around a blind curve, Deacon, in his half-shifted form, stepped into the middle of the road. The driver slammed on the brakes, the truck's air brakes hissing in protest as the massive vehicle skidded to a halt just feet from the hulking, shadowy figure in its headlights. The driver's door flew open, the man fumbling for a flare or a weapon. He never got the chance. I came out of the darkness on his side, Marcus on the other. We didn't hurt him. We didn't need to. We took him to an old abandoned barn a few miles off the road. We tied him to a chair. Marcus conducted the interrogation. He didn't lay a hand on the man. He didn't have to. The driver was a paunchy, middle-aged guy named Gary, terrified out of his mind. "I don't know anything," he stammered, his eyes wide with terror. "I just drive the truck. I haul medical supplies, that's all." Marcus just stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded to me. I stepped back into the deep shadows at the rear of the barn. I let the change happen. It was faster now, more controlled. The agony was still there, a fire in my bones, but I could push through it. I let the shadows swallow my human form and spit out the 8-foot-tall nightmare. I took one step forward into the dim light cast by our flashlight and let out a low, guttural snarl. Gary's face went white. He started sobbing. "He calls himself the Creator," he blurted out, the words tumbling over each other. "Finch. Dr. Finch. He runs everything. Not from the underground lab, not anymore. He works out of the Sierra outpost. It's a research and admin facility up near Sonora Pass. That's where the brains are. That's where all the data is kept. Please, God, don't kill me." We had our target. Sierra outpost. Not the prison we escaped from, but the brain. The command center. The shared purpose, the clear objective, reforged our bond. The raw wound of Sam's loss was still there, but now it wasn't just a source of grief. It was fuel. We left the driver tied up but unharmed, with enough water to last until morning. We took his truck. As we drove away into the night, I looked at Marcus and Deacon. The haunted, broken look was gone. In its place was a cold, hard resolve. We weren't victims anymore. We were a hunter-killer team, and our hunt was just beginning. For 2 nights we watched the Sierra outpost from a windswept peak a mile away, using a pair of stolen high-power binoculars. It wasn't a fortress of concrete and steel like the lab we'd escaped. It was a sleek, modern corporate campus of glass and brushed metal, an architectural marvel nestled in a mountain valley. But the beauty was a facade. It was surrounded by a 10-foot-high electrified fence, and we watched regular patrols of Aegis security move with professional precision. Attacking it head-on would be suicide. But every fortress has a flaw. On the second night of surveillance, I spotted it. A large-diameter concrete pipe disgorging wastewater into the nearby river, a sewer outflow. It was our way in. We went in during a storm. The sky was a roiling black canvas, and the rain came down in sheets, turning the landscape into a blur. The storm would mask our sound, our scent, and our thermal signatures. We slipped into the icy, fast-moving river and swam to the outflow pipe. The grate was heavy steel, bolted into the concrete. A problem for men, not for us. Deacon, with a low grunt of effort, bent the thick steel bars far enough for us to squeeze through. The stench inside the sewer tunnel was overwhelming, a foul cocktail of chemicals and waste that made even my enhanced senses recoil. It was the price of stealth. We moved through the oppressive darkness, our thermal vision turning the narrow pipe into a glowing tube. We emerged into a maintenance sublevel, a maze of pipes, conduits, and humming machinery. Here, our senses were our greatest asset. We moved through the guts of the facility like ghosts in the machine. I could hear the low murmur of conversations from guards 2 floors above us, their heartbeats a steady rhythmic drum. I could smell the distinct clean scent of a sterile laboratory versus the ozone-tinged air of a server room. Deacon, with his raw power, became our breacher, silently prying open ventilation shaft covers and locked maintenance hatches. Our target, based on the schematics I'd glimpsed in my nightmares of the lab, was the central server farm in sub-level 3. Marcus, moving with the lethal silence of a stalking panther, neutralized the 2 guards outside the server room. They never made a sound. One moment they were standing, the next they were slumped on the floor, unconscious. I sat down at the system administrator's terminal. The air hummed with the power of 1,000 processors. "I don't have long," I whispered. "They do hourly check-ins. I've got 10 minutes max." Hacking a secure corporate network is one thing. Hacking one designed by Aegis Dynamics was another. But I wasn't just an analyst anymore. My mind, supercharged by the virus, processed information at an incredible rate. I found a back door, a maintenance port left open by a lazy technician. I was in. I found everything. Project Lycaon, all our files, medical data, psychological profiles, combat effectiveness projections. Then I found the failures. Dozens of them. Video files of the subjects who came before us. Men whose bodies couldn't handle the LRAV. Their transformations turning them into grotesque, screaming masses of flesh and bone that had to be incinerated. We weren't the first. We were just the first to survive. But then, digging deeper, past layers of encryption that would have taken a government agency weeks to crack, I found something else. A project file so deeply buried it was practically a myth. Project Xenophage. My blood ran cold as I opened the first file. It was video, grainy footage from a combat drone. The location stamp said Rook, Colorado. A small, forgotten town. The official story had been a chemical plant explosion, a toxic spill. The reality was infinitely more horrifying. The video showed a thing, a rippling, chitinous black biomass spreading like a cancerous mold over the town, consuming everything, trees, houses, people. And from the bodies of the consumed, new horrors erupted, skittering, insectoid creatures that moved with unnatural speed, their limbs like obsidian scythes. The drone footage ended as one of them leaped at the camera. A single document was attached. A threat analysis by Finch himself. He called it the Weeping Blight, a parasitic, non-terrestrial life form, a planetary extinction event waiting to happen. Conventional weapons were useless against it. It required a predator that could hunt it on a biological level, a predator that could smell it, track it, and rip it apart before it could spread. He hadn't built us to fight men. He had built us to fight monsters. An alarm klaxon began to blare on the terminal. I'd been discovered. In the final seconds before the system locked me out, I downloaded one last file, a file I'd found in a sandboxed, encrypted folder labeled Contingency A. Finch. It wasn't a corporate file, it was personal. Dr. Alistair Finch's complete personnel record, his psych profile, his service history, and a deed of ownership, his private residence, a secluded estate on the coast of Oregon. We fled as the facility erupted in alarms and flashing red lights. We vanished back into the storm-lashed guts of the building, leaving behind a hornet's nest of enraged security. We had the truth, and we had his address. The journey north to Oregon was a 3-day blur of stolen vehicles and tense silence. We ditched the logistics truck and hotwired a beat-up Ford F-150 from a motel parking lot. 200 miles later, we swapped it for a beat-up sedan. The truth we'd uncovered at the Sierra outpost didn't absolve Finch. It damned him. He hadn't just turned us into monsters. He'd done it based on a monstrous secret he'd kept from the world. Finch's home wasn't a house. It was a declaration of war. A modern fortress of black steel, concrete and shatterproof glass perched on a rocky cliff overlooking the churning gray Pacific. The approach was a single private road, flanked by signs reading, "Restricted Area, U.S. Navy Proving Ground, Decommissioned, No Trespassing." Aegis hadn't just bought Finch a house, they'd bought him a private, legally untouchable chunk of the Oregon coastline. He knew we were coming. He was waiting. This was a trap. The moment my foot touched the manicured lawn, the estate came alive. The ground hissed as panels slid open, revealing retractable turrets, but they didn't glow with the heat of machine guns. They hummed with a familiar, sickening thrum, infrasound emitters. From hidden hatches in the earth, 4 figures rose. SCU operators, but bigger, faster. They were clad in sleek, black exoskeletons, hydraulic pistons whining as they moved. Aegis had upgraded their hunters. "It's a kill box!" Marcus yelled, the first infrasound wave washing over us, a sickening pulse that vibrated through my teeth. The battle was the most desperate of our lives. They were prepared for everything. The sonic cannons tried to pin us down while the exo-troopers moved in for the kill, their augmented strength matching Deacon's raw power. They knew our weaknesses, but we knew their tactics. Deacon, roaring in a mixture of pain and pure berserker rage, ignored the sonic assault and charged a turret, tearing the emitter from its housing with a screech of tortured metal. Marcus directed the fight, a whirlwind of tactical fury, drawing their fire, creating openings. My job was to find a way through the system. I saw the power conduits running from the house to the turrets, glowing lines in my thermal vision. I ripped one from the ground, showering the lawn in sparks and silencing a quarter of their sonic weapons. We fought our way to the house, battered and bleeding. Deacon smashed through a plate glass window that was supposed to be bulletproof, and we poured inside. The interior was immaculate, a sterile museum of modern art and expensive furniture. And there, in a sprawling study with a panoramic view of the raging ocean, Dr. Alistair Finch was waiting for us. He wasn't afraid. He stood calmly by the window, swirling a glass of amber liquid. He looked at the three blood-soaked monsters who had just torn through his multi-million-dollar security system and nodded, as if greeting old colleagues. "I must confess," he said, his voice as smooth as the whiskey in his glass. "I'm impressed. Your combat effectiveness has exceeded even my most optimistic projections." "We know about the weeping blight, Finch," Marcus snarled, stalking forward. "We know what you built us for." Finch didn't flinch. He gestured to the floor beneath his feet. "Then you should know that these defenses were not just for you. They were for containment. I made a terrible mistake bringing a sample here. A miscalculation." He took a sip of his drink. "And I made a mistake with you. I should have told you the truth from the beginning. I should have asked for volunteers. But I was afraid. Afraid you'd say no. So yes, I turned you into monsters. Because humanity needs monsters to fight the ones that are coming." He looked at us, his cold eyes filled with a terrifying, sincere conviction. "The blight is real. It's dormant, but it will wake again. Help me. Help me convince Aegis, the government, anyone who will listen. Help me save the world." Deacon let out a low, guttural laugh. "Save the world? You destroyed ours." "I gave you the power to be its saviors," Finch insisted. His plea fell on deaf ears. He was asking for absolution we couldn't give. But just as Marcus was about to deliver the final verdict, Finch played his last, desperate card, a card that changed everything. "You're right to hate me," he said, his voice suddenly low and urgent. "But you need to understand, they didn't kill Samuel." The world stopped. We froze, staring at him. "He's alive," Finch said, his eyes boring into mine. "His capture wasn't a failure. It was an objective. He's the key to the next phase of the project. A more stable version. They're holding him. And if you ever want to see your brother again, you will do exactly as I say." Marcus stared at Finch, his face an unreadable mask of granite. The air in the study crackled with a tension thicker than the storm outside. For a moment, I thought Marcus might actually consider it, might weigh the fate of the world against our own private war. Then he spoke, his voice as cold and final as a tombstone. "Your war is not our war." Deacon took a step forward, a predator closing in, every muscle in his body screaming for violence. "I'm going to tear you apart, you piece of—" "No," Marcus commanded, putting a hand on Deacon's chest. The simple gesture stopped the rampaging beast in his tracks. Marcus's eyes never left Finch's. "Killing you is too easy. You can live with what you've done. You can live in the world you're so desperate to save, knowing you created the only weapons that could have helped, and we will never be yours to wield." We turned to leave, the decision made. We would find Sam on our own. "You fools!" Finch screamed after us, his composure finally shattering. "You don't understand. Aegis will never stop. They can't afford to have uncontrolled assets like you in the wild. They won't just hunt you, they'll erase you. The only way you survive is by fighting on my side." His words were prophetic. As we reached the shattered front entrance of the house, the night sky was sliced open by the harsh, white beams of searchlights. The rhythmic thump, thump, thump of heavy helicopters grew from a distant pulse to a deafening roar. 3 black, unmarked transport choppers were descending on the estate. Aegis was here. Finch hadn't been lying. They weren't just coming for us. They were coming for him, too. A corporate cleanup crew sent to sanitize his rogue operation and retrieve their property. All of it. Suddenly we were in a 3-way war. The new Aegis troops rappelling from the choppers were even more advanced than the SCU. They wore heavier armor and carried weapons that glowed with a faint blue energy. They opened fire on everything that moved, on us, and on Finch's remaining automated defenses. We were caught in a crossfire, forced back into the relative cover of the house. It was chaos. Energy bolts sizzled through the air, impacting concrete with explosive force. Finch, from a panic room console, was now fighting alongside us, his turrets firing on the Aegis soldiers, a desperate, self-serving act of survival. An unwilling alliance, I muttered, ducking behind a marble column as a volley of plasma fire turned a priceless sculpture into molten slag. In the midst of the firefight, Finch scrambled out of his control room, clutching a small, hardened data drive. He shoved it into my hand, his eyes wild with desperation. "They're taking him to Project Prometheus," he yelled over the din of battle. "It's their primary biocontainment facility. All the data you need to find it, to get inside, it's on here. It's your only chance to find Samuel." The information was a life raft in an ocean of fire. We had no choice but to take it. We fought our way out of the back of the house, using the chaos as cover. The Aegis forces were focused on neutralizing Finch and securing the main building. We were a secondary objective they could deal with later. We scrambled down the treacherous cliff face, the rocks slick with rain and sea spray, and vanished into the churning darkness of the rocky shoreline below. We left Finch to his fate, a cornered creator besieged by his own corporation. We didn't know if he would live or die, and at that moment we didn't care. Huddled in a sea cave, the thunder of the battle above slowly fading, we were alone again. We were fugitives once more, but this time was different. We weren't just running from our past anymore. We were running toward a future, toward a single vital objective. The weight of Finch's terrible truth settled on our shoulders. A slumbering, world-eating evil was real. Our brother was a prisoner of the very people who wanted to use us as a weapon against it. The choice had been made for us. Our war wasn't for the world. It was for our family. Our new sanctuary was an abandoned lighthouse, a lonely sentinel standing against the fury of the Oregon coast. The cold, salt-laced wind that howled around the tower was a constant companion, a mournful cry that mirrored the emptiness inside us. The fire of vengeance had cooled, replaced by the ice of pure, cold resolve. Our mission was no longer about payback. It was about retrieval. I found an old generator in a maintenance shed and got it running. I plugged in the stolen laptop, the screen a tiny beacon of hope in the dark, circular room at the base of the lighthouse. I slid Finch's data drive into the USB port. It was all there. Schematics, guard rotations, security protocols, Project Prometheus. It was an underground prison and laboratory complex, buried deep beneath the blistering heat of the Nevada desert. A black site to rival all black sites. The files were a blueprint for a suicide mission. And then I found the medical logs for Asset L4, Samuel. My hands tightened into fists as I read. They weren't just holding him. They were experimenting on him, subjecting him to amplified doses of the LRAV, trying to force controlled transformations, to stabilize the aggression triggers. The clinical, detached language of the reports made my stomach turn. They were torturing him, trying to perfect their weapon. Marcus and Deacon stood over my shoulder, their massive forms casting long, dancing shadows on the curved walls. We stared at the blueprints, the three of us united in a grim, silent pact. This was impossible. A direct assault on Aegis's most secure facility. But there was no hesitation, not a flicker of doubt in anyone's eyes. We had left him behind once. We would not fail him again. The roles were clear, falling into place as if we'd been training for this our entire lives. Marcus, our tactician, would plan the assault. He traced lines on the digital map, memorizing every corridor, every vent, every blind spot. "We hit them here, at the geothermal power conduit," he said, his voice low and certain. "Create a system-wide failure. Plunge them into chaos and darkness, our darkness. Deacon, our force of nature, would be the hammer. His job was to create a diversion, a frontal assault on the secondary entrance so loud and violent that it would draw the bulk of their forces, while Marcus and I went in through the breach." He just nodded, a hungry, feral grin on his face. My job was to be the key. I was the navigator, the hacker. Once inside, I would have to guide us through the labyrinth, bypass their internal security, and pinpoint Sam's exact location in that maze of concrete and steel. As I stared at my own reflection in the dark screen of the laptop, I saw my face, gaunt and haunted. But for the first time since the transformation, I didn't see a monster. I saw a soldier. I saw an analyst tasked with the most critical mission of his life. The curse Finch had given us. We were finally choosing how to wield it. We were no longer damned. We were a weapon, aimed by our own will. Before we left, the three of us climbed the winding iron staircase to the top of the lighthouse, into the lamp room. We stood in silence, watching the gray, endless expanse of the Pacific Ocean churning below. No grand speeches, no words of encouragement. They weren't needed. We were a pack, battered, broken, but whole in our purpose. We were going to get our own back. We descended the stairs. The engine of another stolen truck coughed to life in the pre-dawn gloom. Our path was east, into the sun-scorched emptiness of the desert. The hunters from Aegis were still out there. The ancient slumbering horror of the weeping blight was still a threat. The fate of the world hung in a balance we didn't understand, but none of that mattered now. Right now there was only one war. The war for Samuel. And it was a war we would not lose.